right, so we're going to kind of go back and do some refreshing and then some new stuff with T-charts and graphing. Yesterday we started sketching the graph of a line using intercepts. Today we're going to continue using intercepts and then also some old stuff that you remember as in T-charts. So if you remember, back when we were doing reflections, you guys remember doing the reflections over a line? We would create a T-chart, right? This just tells me that x is always going to be -2, right? It says x equals -2. So this is kind of a recall from what we did when we were doing some geometry in the reflections, when we were highlighting our line of reflection. So if my x is always going to be -2, I can pick 3 numbers. Do you remember what those numbers that I like to use because they're simple? So 0. What's the other one? There's 3. No. So 1, 0, and -1. So that gives me 3 points that I can right away plot. So let's go ahead and plot those points. So starting at my point of origin, my x is -2, so I'm going to go left 2, my y is 1, I'm going to go up 1. Back to my point of origin, go left 2, my y is 0, so I don't move up or down, I just put a point there. I go back to my point of origin, my x is -2, my y is -1, so I go down 1, and that gives me a nice clean line where I can graph by connecting my points. When I graph it, I want to make sure I'm looking for 3 things here. I'm looking that my graph goes end to end. End to end. One side of the graph to the other side of the graph. End to end. Whatever that end is. Okay, end to end. That's the first thing that I'm looking for. The second thing that I'm looking for is that I have arrows at the ends of my line. So the ends of my line have an arrow. That tells me that that line continues this way and it can continue that way. And the third thing is I want you to label the graph. Okay, so I'm going to label this graph with my original equation, which tells me x equals 2. So I'm going to turn it sideways. X equals -2. And I've labeled that graph. So those are the 3 things that I want us to look for when we are graphing the equation of a line. Anytime you graph, these 3 things need to be on there. My graph needs to go end to end. I need to have arrows at either end, and then it needs to be labeled. 3 things that I'm looking for. Make sure you have those copied down in your notes. All right. So if you look at number 2, it's a lot like number 1. This time it tells you what y equals. So I'm going to have you guys, this should be review from when we did the graphing. I'm going to have you guys go ahead and do number 2 on your own. So work on it. We'll walk around, check your work, and let's see if you can do number 2. All right, so let's see. Some of you guys were doing great jobs. Some of you guys got this absolutely correct. So it tells me y is 5, so we're doing 5, 5, 5, and that was perfect pretty much for all of you. Here's where some of you struggled. I like to use 1, 0, -1. Some of you had some crazy numbers. Okay? And then here's where a lot of you are still struggling with the graphing. I had lines going this way. I had a line up over here. But if I'm graphing appropriately, from 0, my x is 1, my y is 5, so I should be going up to 5. From my point of origin, my x is 0. I don't move left or right, but I go up to 5. From my point of origin, my x is -1, so I go left 1 and I go up to 5, which gives me a line that goes across the top on 5, end to end, and then it's labeled y equals 5. Okay, some of you did that perfectly. Some of you are struggling with the graphing. We're going to do a lot of graphing for the next 2 weeks. You'll have a quiz next week, either Friday or the following week. Most likely Friday. Okay? All right, so let's look at number 3. And some of you went ahead and were doing T-charts, and that's fine and dandy, but I didn't ask you to, and you have no idea what you're doing. So this time we're going to do a T-chart for this one. But if you notice, it's got a 2x and a 3y. Okay? So I'm going to use a specific number to make this work. Okay, I'm going to use a T-chart for this one. Here's my x and here's my y. I'm going to look at the coefficient of y. What is the coefficient of y? 3. So I'm going to say 3, 0, and -3. Look good? But how do I find these numbers then? Anybody have a clue? Yes. So yesterday we substituted, right? And today we're going to substitute again. Okay. So if y is 3, okay, 3 times 3 is 9. So I'm going to subtract 9. We have to actually do some work. And that's why I said you're going to need a separate sheet of paper. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the math over here. See if I can show it all at once. There we go. So I have 2x plus 3, and my first one is going to be 3, times 3 equals 0, right? Nathan, you should really be paying attention. This becomes 2x plus 9 equals 0, right? I'm going to subtract 9 and subtract 9. Now I have 2x is equal to -9. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. X is going to equal the fraction 9/2. If I was to make this into a mixed number, it would be easier to graph. 9 divided by -2, or 2 goes into a 9 how many times? 4, and it gives you a remainder of 1. So x is equal to 4.5, or 4.5. Okay? So I can say that my x is 4.5. Right? So let's look at the next one. Tells me my y is 0. So now I have 2x plus 3 times 0 equals 0, right? What's 3 times 0? So that gives me 2x is equal to 0. If I divide both sides by 2, what is x equal to? What is x equal to? What is it? 0. So my x is 0. Okay, I have one more, and again, I'm going to substitute. So I'm going to take my 2x plus 3, 2x plus 3 times a -3 this time. Make sure when you're substituting, you use parentheses so you don't make a mistake. Okay, use parentheses always, and it equals 0, right? So now I have 2x, 3 times a -3 gives me a -9. So I have 2x minus 9 equals 0, right? Add 9 to both sides. This gives me 2x is equal to 9. Divide by 2. Put it on his desk. He takes attendance. X is equal to 9/2, which what did we figure out 9/2 is? 4.5. So this is negative over here, right? This one is positive. X equals 4.5. That one's negative, and this one's a positive. So if you notice a pattern, when x is here, x was a negative or positive, and it ended up with a negative. Here, x was a negative, and I ended up with a positive. you might find that same thing happening. So we can still graph this, right? X is 4.5. That means 4.5. And then my y is 3. So I go up 3. Okay. 0, 0, my point of origin. X is, oh, I went backwards, didn't I? Well, it's there. Here, this one, X is negative 4.5. And Y is negative 3. Which gives me a diagonal line going through that point of origin. And I label it with my original 2x plus 3y equals 0. And here we use a t-chart to find the graph of this line. So when you use a t-chart and it's not a simple x equals 2, you want to use coefficient of the y variable. So whatever's in front of that y. Any questions? Comments? Concerns? No? Do you guys want to do another one together? I'm gonna help you guys out here. 6. You can do for number 5, use intercepts. For number 8, use intercepts. For number 7, use intercept. No. Yeah. Use intercepts. No. Number 7, don't. Sorry. Number 8, use intercepts. Number 10, use intercepts, I mean. Use intercepts. And number 12, use intercepts. So you're going to use t-charts for number 4, 6, 7, 9, and 11. And use intercepts only for the last 4. Understand? So we're going to do number 5 together because that's an intercept one, just to refresh your memory of what you did yesterday. Okay, so 4, 6, 7, 9, 11 are t-charts. 5, 8, 10, 12 are intercepts. Okay, so intercepts, we're going to do x-intercept, y equals 0, x minus 2 times 0 equals 2, right? Cross that off. X is equal to 2. Y-intercept, when x is 0, we're going to rewrite it. 0 minus 2y equals 2, right? I'm going to divide by a negative 2 both sides. Y is going to be equal to a negative 1. So here, I'm going to have 2, 0. This order pair is going to be 0, negative 1. Sorry, move up. I'm going to plot my points now. X is 2, y is 0, right on that x-intercept, or x-axis. Here, x is 0, y is negative 1, right on my y-axis. Graph it. And label it with my original equation. That's using intercepts. That's yesterday's work. All right? You have 8 problems left to do for homework. Use your time wisely. Begin now. All right, so I want to make a quick correction. Earlier, I told you guys when you're doing intercepts for these problems to use the coefficient of the y-intercept. And that's true. Where I kind of steered you wrong is I put it in the y column, but you should actually use this for your x values. So in this case, the coefficient is -2, so we're going to use -2, 0, and +2. So when we solve these equations, we're going to substitute for x and not y. And it's going to come out evenly, and you're not going to have any weird fractions or odd numbers that aren't going to be able to divide evenly with this -2 number because they are members of the same fact family. Okay, so just to reiterate, when you go back and you do your work, make sure you're using the coefficient of y, but you're putting that value with 0 and its opposite in the x column. And that's what you'll be substituting for, is you'll be substituting these numbers for x in your equation to get your y coordinate. All right, that's it. Just make sure you're doing that. Thanks. Bye.